ETFs obviously have seen massive inflows. Unchained seeing massive growth and number of new clients, more trading, more people buying Bitcoin directly to cold storage. We recently surpassed 100,000 Bitcoin that we helped secure on our platform. So now that's over 10 billion US dollars, and it's going great.
So I thought before we get into some questions about institutional adoption, could you share a bit about your role at Unchained?
Yeah,
and how
absolutely.
You got, and how you got involved with Bitcoin?
Yeah, I can start from the beginning and then go into Unchained. I first learned about Bitcoin in 2017. I was in college at the time, and I just remember scrolling on Reddit. I somehow subscribed to our cryptocurrency or our Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin in early 2017 started around $1,000 per coin, went up to 2,000, 3,000, eventually ended the year at 20,000. And in college, I was kind of just naturally interested in value investing. So buying blue chip US stocks like Coca-Cola or IBM, they pay out a 2 to 3% dividend. They go up 2 to 3% per year, and that's how you save for the future. And so just watching the price of Bitcoin during that year when the price was going practically exponential was just absolutely fascinating, because I was like, what is this asset? This is clearly some sort of weird digital bubble or Ponzi scheme. But the price kept going up, so I was interested in it because I was interested in money, I was interested in finance, I was interested in investing. And so I was just curious, so I was like, all right, I'll buy a little bit of it. And then the 2018 bear market came in where Bitcoin fell from 20,000 roughly to back down to 3,000. And I just dove into Bitcoin, tried to read as much as I could about it, tried to listen to podcasts about it. Saifedean sent me a PDF of the Bitcoin Standard, his book that he released, I think during 2018 or early 2019. And just reading about it and learning about it, I came to the conclusion, I was like, this makes so much sense. Like, this is a superior form of money. The dollar is designed to be debased. That's why everyone's forced to buy a bunch of real estate, buy a bunch of equities, and buy a bunch of fixed income. And instead of that, if you just had good money and you could save for the future, you wouldn't necessarily need to hold a lot of wealth in assets or fixed income. And so I was hooked.
So it made sense to you, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, it made a lot of sense, but the price kept going down. But obviously, eventually, the price started to recover. Graduated school, joined Ernst & Young as a technology consultant right out of college. Quickly realized that I was super passionate about Bitcoin. Peak of 2021, joined a company called Blockware Solutions, which is a mining company. 2 years later, I joined Unchained, and now it's about 2 years later from then where I'm director of market research. And so we publish a bunch of research reports. For example, we just published one with Strive, which is the CEO is Matt Cole, and Strive was co-founded by Vivek Ramaswamy. It's basically his asset management company, and they're one of the more recent companies to adopt Bitcoin as a part of their corporate treasury. So we did a research report with them. I also host a podcast called the Bitcoin Frontier that is owned by Unchained. And yeah,
Cool.
we're just going out there doing research on Bitcoin and trying to educate people on Bitcoin.
Nice. So you made it your life, basically.
Exactly. Made it my career.
And it took care of you in the process.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're focusing with Unchained a lot on institutional adoption. Is this where you're choosing to focus?
Yeah, I mean, Unchained serves a variety of clients, right? Like, it could be high net worth individuals, it could be small businesses, it could be public corporations, it could be institutions as well. So it's typically like not necessarily the retail type crowd. And so, yeah, I would say there is a subset of clients that would qualify as institutional adoption.
And how is that moving at the moment?
It's good. I mean, ETFs obviously have seen massive inflows. Unchained seeing massive growth and number of new clients, more trading, more people buying Bitcoin directly to cold storage. We recently surpassed 100,000 Bitcoin that we help secure on our platform. So now that's, over 10 billion US dollars. And it's going great.
So basically, so with the current momentum, let's say, of companies who are investing in Bitcoin, do you think that this is going to increase year on year, maybe
Yeah.
double every year, and then in 2 years' time it will double again? And do you see that happening with this kind of transition out of, let's say, saving in fiat into BTC?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact growth rate, but yeah, it's definitely growing. I mean, I feel like we're seeing an increasing trend of people realizing that, okay, well, I definitely shouldn't hold cash. This new Bitcoin thing is very interesting. If you look at Bitcoin, compared to gold, for example, and, I like to compare Bitcoin as digital gold. Well, gold is a $20 trillion market cap, maybe a little bit more than that. Bitcoin is roughly a $2 trillion market cap. Okay, well, if Bitcoin just, reaches gold parity, well, that's a 10x that Bitcoin would need to do in price just to achieve the same level of, market size as gold. And arguably, Bitcoin is better than gold, right? It's perfectly scarce. It's portable over the internet. It's infinitely divisible. It's fungible. It has all these unique superior monetary properties that make it a superior monetary asset. And so, like, when you look at company like Unchained or really any company in the Bitcoin space, we're all seeing immense growth, also immense volatility through the various adoption cycles. But over time, yes, definitely more and more people, whether that's high net worth individuals, corporations, or institutions, are, buying and holding Bitcoin in cold storage and using as a form of long-term savings technology.
So these high net worth individuals, what are they after exactly? Like when they speak to Unchained and yourself, like what are they in need of? What is the thing that attracts them most?
Yeah. So you can, if you think about like how you get into Bitcoin, like from my perspective, a lot of people get into Bitcoin because the number's going up. It's this new savings technology. They don't really understand it, and they want to have some sort of allocation to it. And so that might mean they go buy Bitcoin on Coinbase, they buy one of the new Bitcoin ETFs, and so on and so forth. But I think what's really interesting about Bitcoin is it's an asset that you can hold without counterparty risk. Obviously, most people know Bitcoin has no dilution risk because it's a perfectly scarce asset. You cannot make more than 21 million, i.e. you cannot dilute the supply, but it also can be held with no counterparty risk. So when you buy Bitcoin on Coinbase or you buy a Bitcoin ETF, you are taking on counterparty risk, meaning, if your Bitcoin's on Coinbase, Coinbase holds the private keys to the Bitcoin. They can theoretically run off of Bitcoin. They're a massive honeypot, so they could be targeted, or they are in fact definitely targeted by hackers or social engineering attempts to extract Bitcoin from within Coinbase or from your account within Coinbase. And then similar to the ETFs, like the ETFs, you hold an IOU that is effectively part of portion of a Bitcoin, and then BlackRock or Fidelity or whoever then custodies the Bitcoin with their custodian, which might be Coinbase, might be Fidelity, might be someone else. And then that custodian at the end of the day holds the private keys. So you have a variety of different intermediaries that are acting as potential sources of counterparty risk. And so again, like what's cool about Bitcoin is you can hold it without counterparty risk. And that's exactly what Unchained helps people do. Of course, that may not be straightforward to know anyone that's never interacted with Bitcoin or has never held private keys before in their life. And so what Unchained can do is we can actually help you like walk through the process of holding Bitcoin in a secure manner using your own private keys. And so, for example, our core vault custody product is something called a multi-sig product, where it's a 2 of 3 multi-sig. And all multi-sig basically means is your Bitcoin is secured by multiple keys, not just one key. And so in the core vault product, 2 of 3 multi-sig means you need 2 keys to move the Bitcoin, and then there are 3 total keys that exist. And so typically as a client, you would hold 2 keys, which enables you to access the Bitcoin completely without Unchained. And then Unchained holds the third key as a backup in case you lose one of your keys, or one of your keys is in a different location and you just want to use Unchained to help you move the Bitcoin. And so it's a very unique way. It's called collaborative custody to hold Bitcoin, because you can remain sovereign, but it's also a little less scary than doing it all yourself. And so effectively, Unchained can walk you through the process of doing that, help you remain sovereign as an individual or even as a corporation, and effectively like eliminate single points of failure when it comes to holding Bitcoin.
It's a very much a hold the hand kind of thing, because at least if you lose a key, you can still enter if you have Unchained,
Exactly.
basically, which is an interesting way of looking at it. So with the way Unchained do it, is it better than how Coinbase do it, for example, or are there different ways to do custody?
Yeah, there's definitely different ways to do custody, and it depends on what you're looking for, right? I would definitely argue that Unchained is better than Coinbase, right? Because if you're using Coinbase, you're entirely trusting them and their systems, and hoping that, even some of their employees don't get socially engineered into an attacker acting like that you forgot your password, as if they're acting as you, trying to get access to your account and then withdrawing your Bitcoin, which...
That can happen with Unchained too, though, no?
Well, if someone hacks into your Unchained account and Unchained only has one key and you have two keys, then
They still can't do anything.
the attacker can't do anything unless
Exactly.
the attacker. So that's kind of the key idea behind Unchained, is it's all about eliminating a single point of failure, where your Unchained account itself is not even a single point of failure. The attacker would have to attack and hack into your Unchained account, or like know your username and password effectively. And then they would also have to get one of your own private keys that you have stored wherever you have happened to store it. So it's they would have to compromise two points of your custody setup.
How are Coinbase doing it?
So if I have your username and password to Coinbase, I can log into your Coinbase account and withdraw your Bitcoin. That would be a single point of failure to the Bitcoin that you would have in Coinbase. Coinbase has their own unique custody setup within Coinbase, which is just kind of a black box to some extent. Obviously, it should be fairly secure, but they're not going to provide details on exactly like where their private keys are stored and things like that. But yeah, no, it's effectively Coinbase and other crypto exchanges have a single point of failure for your Bitcoin, which is risky in the digital age when there's constantly hacks and breaches and whatnot. And like that's what we've seen with the history of Bitcoin, right? Like Mt. Gox was one of the first major Bitcoin exchanges. It was hacked. A lot of coins were lost. You've had companies like BlockFi and Celsius, which enabled you to deposit your Bitcoin, earn yield, and hopefully you get the Bitcoin back. Well, they lent your Bitcoin to the wrong counterparties, lost your Bitcoin, and you may not have gotten any Bitcoin back, or you got a small portion of what you originally deposited. So it's been like a recurring theme in this entire space for crypto exchanges to get hacked, or crypto exchanges to do nefarious things or negligent things with your Bitcoin. And that's how a lot of Bitcoin has been lost. So that's exactly what Unchained tries to do, is we try to help you hold your Bitcoin for generations, not just hold it for the next year and hopefully it doesn't get hacked. That's
Interesting. And this way of custody is being used by companies as well, or only by high net worth individuals?
Yep. Yeah, it's being
by companies
used
as well.
Yes.
By companies as well. And to divert a little bit, with regards to demand, from which sides of the world is the most demand? Like, is it everywhere, or is it like places you didn't expect that really want access to Bitcoin?
Yeah. So currently, Unchained is only for U.S. citizens.
Okay.
Maybe that'll change eventually, but that's what it is right now.
Okay. So Trump's investment of like a reported 2.5 billion Bitcoin investment, how is that going to affect the next 6 to 9 months?
Yeah, I mean, The Bitcoin Treasury company trend is fascinating right now. Obviously, you've got like Trump media that announced that they're going to buy some Bitcoin. Strategy has obviously done exceptionally well since they started this in 2020. You have Metaplanet in Japan that's performed exceptionally well. You have the France Bitcoin company as well, the blockchain group, I believe, and many more that are doing the same strategy. So I think it's an increasing trend and very promising that the president of the United States, his name is on that company. They're buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. The United States now has a national strategic Bitcoin reserve. And with the executive order that Trump passed, the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Treasury have the ability to today purchase Bitcoin in a budget neutral framework for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. They haven't done that yet, at least publicly, but it's possible that they will do that in the future. So I think it's a promising trend, seeing the president and even the president's sons getting deeply involved with the entire Bitcoin industry. And I think it's very promising for the next 6 to 9 months, but also just the next 4 to 10 years.
So this current pullback that you're seeing, we hit 111,000. Is it panic station if we hit 98, if we hit 90 or something? Do you think that can happen, or what's your, I don't know, what are you seeing for the next 5, 6 months?
Yeah.
How does this play out? And from a 4-year cycle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective, the short-term price action of Bitcoin is almost impossible to predict. Everyone knows it's a highly volatile asset on the upside and the downside, and so anything in the short term is just incredibly difficult to predict, right? From a 4-year perspective, like I'm bullish, right? Like I think over almost every 4-year period, Bitcoin's been up. Maybe there's like a couple periods where if you bought the Pico top of 2017 and held until sometime in 2020,
Yeah, you'd be up.
yeah, it's close. But yeah, you'd mostly almost always be up. And so that's kind of how we think about Bitcoin at Unchained. Like we think about, okay, Bitcoin is something that you hold for generations to come. It's long-term savings technology. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not something that you can buy and the next year you're going to 10x your money. It's effectively what you should do when you have capital that you want to save for the very long-term future for you or your family. And so that's how we like to think about it. And it kind of relates back to our product is like, okay, well, if that's the case, you want to make sure you don't lose this long-term savings technology. So yeah, I mean, I think short-term, like anything can happen. I tend to be bullish.
Yeah, but what do you think? Like, if you had to just take a fun guess, no strings attached to anything, like just a fun guess. Like, do you think we go over 200,000, or do you think we push closer to what the Trumps are saying, which is like 1 million? That's what he said. He's pushing for it at least.
I mean, yeah, like neither would surprise me, right? Like Bitcoin has a way of surprising people. So yeah, I mean, over 200,000, I think is definitely in play for the next 12 months. And like I said at the beginning, I think you have gold, which is over a $20 trillion asset. And now you have Bitcoin, which is a $2 trillion asset. I think the market could relatively quickly reprice Bitcoin to gold parity, which would be $1 million per Bitcoin. It's just a matter of momentum and timing and adoption. And I think like one of the interesting things about Bitcoin, at least from my perspective, is the price plays a critical role in driving adoption. Like I think 99.9% of people aren't paying attention to Bitcoin. They haven't studied the history of money. They don't understand that economic systems naturally converge on specific tools that have specific monetary properties that happen to be good money. They don't understand that naturally occurs over time. They don't understand that Bitcoin has the best monetary properties: scarce, portable, durable, divisible, and fungible. And they figure out about Bitcoin, or they learn about Bitcoin because the price starts going up, which is like a market signal saying, hey, pay attention to me. Like I'm important. You may not understand it. You may think this is a bubble. You may think this is a Ponzi scheme, pool theory, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is actually just good money. it's behaving like good money in the market, and that's exactly why adoption continues to grow. It's why more and more people are holding Bitcoin. It's why the price is going up, and that's why Bitcoin occasionally has these exponential bull markets like 2013, 2017, 2021, and maybe 2025, or even last year, which was pretty good too. It's something that's been occurring over time, and it makes a lot of sense once you understand that Bitcoin is simply a better form of money.
Yeah, very nicely put, actually. And so maybe just one last piece on why you think retail is just not getting in, or do you think that first price needs to go up and then they get in, and then that's the end of the cycle, basically?
Yeah,
Because
I
if they
mean,
don't get in, then we can just keep on going up until retail do get in, maybe.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think that like retail would mark the top, although that probably has been, you know, what's happened historically. But I do kind of agree with what you said at first, where it's like retail typically comes in because of price, and however you want to define retail, it's like the next wave of adoption comes in because the price is going up, and because the price is going up, that means they actually will read a book like the Bitcoin Standard, or they will listen to a Bitcoin podcast, and then they'll understand it's a better form of money, and then they'll make a small allocation. So yeah, I mean, I think retail eventually will come in. One thing that's interesting, I think, right now is like the Bitcoin Treasury company phenomenon, where Bitcoin is over $100,000 per Bitcoin, and so retail at this point might be buying things like Bitcoin Treasury companies, where they see it's a little bit more volatile, potentially has a little bit more short-term upside. Obviously, it has more risk overall. It has the custody risk and counterparty risk that we talked about at the beginning, because you don't hold the keys to the Bitcoin. It also might, these companies might borrow money and buy Bitcoin to a small degree, which obviously introduces additional risk. But maybe that's what we'll see this cycle. Retail will be buying a lot of Bitcoin Treasury companies instead of actual Bitcoin. But I think most people, if you're making a significant Bitcoin allocation, you should certainly buy physical Bitcoin and hold it in cold storage with something like Unchained.
Nice. Joe, I've asked all my questions. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I think that demand is increasing now, big time, for Bitcoin. It's becoming a bit obvious that it's a hedge against inflation now, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Cool. Thanks very much. And we'll let you know when I finish the article on this.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Andrew.